On this episode of The Deal, Ted Leonsis. All right, so Ted Leonsis, Alex, he is the founder, chairman, CEO of Monumental Sports and Entertainment, the Capitals of the NHL, the Mystics of the WNBA, and the Wizards of the NBA, plus esports, plus the arena. This guy has built a literal sports empire in the nation's capital.
He has, Jason, and it's what I call the most impressive flywheel of sports with all these blue chip assets in what he calls a super city, which was very educational for us. And I just think he does an incredible job. The most impressive part, he's done it all under the umbrella of Washington, D.C., one of the great cities in the world.
Yeah, and he's leaning into that fact. He has made a career, he even said it himself, of looking just around the corner. And whether that is selling his small company to AOL and then becoming the president of AOL, being a part of the biggest and maybe worst deal in all of corporate history, but then seeing before many did how to make a business out of sports and even bringing institutional capital in. He touches all of it. All right, here's Ted Leonsis. So we like to start the show by having our guests introduce themselves and tell us what you do.
I'm Ted Leonsis. I'm a founder and chairman of Monumental Sports and Entertainment, and we own the Washington Capitals, the Washington Wizards, the Washington Mystics, the Capital One Arena, and the Monumental Sports RSN network, amongst some other sports properties.
All right, we're going to get into all of that, but before we do, we also want to know, what would you consider your signature deal so far?
I don't think I have one signature deal, although I was a participant in the world's worst big deal. So maybe...
Yeah. Remind us what that one was.
AOL bought Time Warner, and it was the largest acquisition in history. AOL was we were the first internet company to go public. We were the fastest growing company. There was a decade where we were the number one performing stock. I did the deal with Google. They were a part of us. We invested in Amazon. We were it, and we bought Time Warner. The cultures couldn't have been more different. The dot-com bomb happened. Basically, it destroyed value. It destroyed Web 1.0. So I guess the signature deal that I would be involved with would be the AOL Time Warner merger. I think I've done dozens of smart deals to build relationships, build platforms and the like. And, I've always been not about the transaction, but the relationship.
So Ted, what did you learn from that deal? What were some of the lessons you took away?
It's better to be about Main Street than Wall Street. That deal was driven by investment banks, the CFOs of the offices. We went from, remember, in fact, I have the sign in my office. I stole it off of the walls when I retired. We're going to build the medium that is more valuable, more important, more secure than the medium before us, television and radio. And we announced the merger, and our corporate mission became generate $11 billion of EBITDA. I don't have an employee. I don't have an associate, a partner who gets up in the morning and says, I'm going to go generate EBITDA today.
Right.
I need that cash flow. And so if you stay true to a mission and you make great products and you have a authentic relationship with your partners, with your board, with your community, the success comes. You can't measure and build from EBITDA out, from cash flow out. And, I've seen that happen. Time Warner then was bought by AT&T. They spun it out pretty fast. Time Warner then was bought by Discovery. David Zaslav, and it's a hard business to run. And all we think about on some of these companies is their cash flow, is their EBITDA, is their earnings per share. You kind of lose your way. So I'm now at a stage of my life where I have just focus on, is the product great? Is the service great? Do they love what we do? Everything will flow from that.
And so what's the moment where you decide, you know what, I want to be in sports?
Well, I grew up in Brooklyn, New York. My dad was a Greek immigrant, and he, of course, became a waiter. And I'm an only kid, and my mom had to work, and she was a secretary, a temporary secretary, worked for a temp firm. And I'd go to school, and I'd get out at 3 o'clock, and they would get home about 6:30. So there was that 3.5 hours, and you had to study, and you had to play sports. And if you didn't, you got in trouble. And so I played Little League Baseball, I played club basketball, I played touch football, and my mom worked as a temp at the Topps baseball card company in Brooklyn, right where the Nets practice now.
Wow.
And then she got a job working for Jonathan Bush at G.H. Walker and Company, and they owned the Mets. They were part owners in the Mets. And we couldn't afford going to Yankees games or New York Giant football games. And he would give my mother tickets. And so I grew up going to Mets games. And then my dad, my biggest Christmas gift was season tickets to the New York Jets. $7 a ticket.
Wow.
$99 for full season.
Wow.
And it was 1969. Jets won the Super Bowl, Mets won the World Series, and I lived in this very interesting neighborhood by the Sunset Park, and the teams brought the community together. I mean, when the Jets won the Super Bowl, everyone came out of their apartments and beeping the horns and hugging and crying, and it's the only day I remember my mom and dad allowing me not to go to school because they had to work. You had to go to school so they could go to work. And we went to the parade. And when we won the Stanley Cup, I told all our players.
The Capitals in Washington.
Washington Capitals won. We had the huge parade and 500,000 people on the mall. And I told all our players, you make eye contact with every kid because that was me. I was like Joe Namath, Matt Snell. And it was so vivid. So when the opportunity came and I had the means to buy the team, that's what compelled me. So sports had always been an important part of my life. I had built a business career, and then you could just see the crescendo, if you will, of sports is about sports to the fans. Sports is about unity and holding a mirror up to the people that you serve in the community. That's why politicians are always around sports. But it's becoming a really big business, and it was way undervalued until the last decade, I would say. And so, I'm at that point in my life and career where I can integrate all of those experiences and try to build something that, can build a great legacy for the fans. I mean, when you win a championship, as the fans, the mothers, the fathers, the sons, the daughters, the best friends, it's their reference point. I was there when. You win a championship, it's immortal. And the fans share in that. I've taken companies public. I've launched products that are billions of dollars. No one cares. Okay? But my name's on the Stanley Cup. I have, a ring in the NHL. You get a World Series ring, so,
immortality.
And that's the thrill of the business.
Ted, you talk about integration, but before there, I've had the great fortune to sit in a seat as one of the governors in the NBA and watch what a force you are in that room, what a great leader. I grew up in Miami, and there was a gentleman by the name of Wayne Heinzinger, who was way ahead of the curve and a pioneer. He owned the Panthers, the Dolphins, and the Marlins, won a championship with the Marlins. But one thing is buying one team, but you're creating this incredible flywheel that I think all of us look at you as kind of the North Star and our mentor that we want to follow. What makes you go from one team to integration of a whole flywheel that you've created?
Well, it's interesting you mentioned Wayne Huizinga. I started my first company in Florida. IBM was introducing the PC, and they moved to Boca Raton, Florida. And I met Wayne, and Wayne started a sanitation company. That's where he made his money. And then he bought the Miami Dolphins and the Marlins, right?
And the Panthers.
And then Blockbuster.
And then Blockbuster, yeah.
And so someone sets up a meeting. I was probably 28, 29 years old with them. And he said, "What business do you think I'm in?" And I said, "You're in the sports business and the movie rental business." And he said, "Nope, come here." And he walks me to the window, he puts his arm around me, and he says, "Look down that alley." And there was a dumpster in the alley. And he said, "I sold the landlord in that apartment building that dumpster 30 years ago. We rent it. I'm in the rental business. I've been billing him $28 a month for 30 years for that piece of metal. Blockbuster, I'm in the rental business. I take a movie and I pay for it once, and then I rent it out to viewers." And he said, "In a way, that's the business I'm in with sports. I'm about renting seats. I paid for the stadium, now I rent seats." And he was a thematic investor. And I said, "I think that's going to work everywhere. I don't know how that's going to work in sports, because as a fan, you don't say, 'I'm renting my seat today.' It's like, those seats, they get passed down generation to
those
generation.
Seats belong to me.
You need, in sport, I think you can have a thesis in any business, but sports, that's only half the thesis. There's the business side, but the product, you have to have passion. And I didn't really sense that Wayne had passion about sports.
But you did. Clearly.
Yeah. Alex asked an interesting question about, do you want to own a sports team or do you want to win championships? And do you want to own a sports team or do you want to build a platform that moves up the value chain in terms of business model? And when I first came into pro sports, I bought 100% of a hockey team and then 44% of the building and an NBA team, and we didn't have a media property. We were not a principal. We were licensing for resale our IP. And at America Online, I was president of America Online. I learned about reoccurring revenues and software as service businesses and having a platform. And with the platform, you can move eyeballs and fingertips around by doing cross promotion. And so I started to explain to people that we want to be aligned in a big market, a super city, and be the largest, most valuable sports enterprise. But no one buys a ticket for Monumental Sports and Entertainment. Right? We hold almost 300 events a year in our building, but they come to see Lady Gaga and U2 and Alex Ovechkin in the Washington Capitals, and
sometimes even the Georgetown Hoyas, sadly.
Georgetown plays in our building, and we can talk about the law of unintended consequences because the Supreme Court changed the collegiate sporting world forever in a majority vote, and everyone celebrated, but didn't consider the law of unintended consequences. Well, everything's changed.
Yeah.
How do we look at now college and universities? They have agents. The players have agents.
and are being paid for their name, image, and likeness. Yeah. Everything has changed.
Georgetown, we won a Big East tournament, and 4 of the 5 starters transferred that offseason.
Wow.
They got better offers from other colleges. In fact, one of the young men transferred back.
Right.
I mean, having unlimited free agency in your college years probably wasn't what people were thinking, but a Supreme Court justice probably didn't know the ins and outs of basketball and NCAA. He was looking at it through, his or her lens.
I do want to ask you, Ted, before we get too far from it, this whole notion of, Washington is your home. It also is an incredible sports city. I mean, is that just you were lucky to be there? Like, why is D.C. the place you decide? Because you had the means to go just about anywhere to do it. But why did Washington ultimately make sense for you?
So there's a theory about are countries important or are economic regions important? So there's this theory that there's going to be 10 super cities, and a super city is defined by some unique ingredients, that you have a minimum of 5 research-oriented universities. Universities, incredibly important. Georgetown, you and I are alums, 1789. It represents longevity in the community. It graduates IP, its students. It attracts students, young people from all over the world, and then they stay in your city. They become additive. We're blessed in D.C. We've got, Johns Hopkins. We've got University of Maryland. We've got University of Virginia. We have that ingredient, that you have a minimum of 3 major international airports. We've got Baltimore, we've got National, we've got Dulles. That you've got green space. We've got the National Mall in D.C. We have the most iconic green space in the country. That you have iconic real estate. We've got the monuments. We've got memorials. You also need a defining business community. We have the federal government. We're the largest customer, largest spender on the planet. So I've always been an evangelist and advocate for Washington, D.C. But D.C. is in a state. We don't exist. If we do it right, we'll be a super city. And the final ingredient of super cities is winning sports teams. You close your eyes and you think of New York, you go, oh, the Yankees. Oh, the Knicks.
Well, he does.
Well, but it's in the fabric. Right. It's why it's a great city. Oh, it has great sports teams. Oh, and it has great iconic real estate. Oh, it has Columbia University. It's got...
Right. But Ted, I mean, on that note, I mean, it's interesting to think about the sports component of it, though, because when you start sort of building this platform of Monumental, to Alex's point, that's not obvious. It's not obvious that sports is going to be anything beyond, you wake up thinking of the Yankees. People weren't thinking about it as a big business. You were.
People weren't thinking of the internet as a big business.
Yeah.
And so what did you see in sports that convinced you that this was a good investment?
Great and deep and passionate and durable fan interest. Families pass on fandom generation to generation. You don't see that in any other consumer product, right? It's not like, my father drove an Oldsmobile, I'm going to drive an Oldsmobile. Right. In fact, they ran a campaign. This is not your father's Oldsmobile. Right. I said, the end is near for that company.
Yeah.
Right. I saw in the tech business, the subscription business. What was AOL? Why were we so highly valued? We got people to pay us $19.99 a month, and we became a must-have product. People wanted their mail. People wanted their instant messaging. And we spent billions of dollars to renew customers. We renew in the NHL and the NBA a bad year, 80 to 85% of our season ticket holders.
Wow.
When you have a great team, you have a waiting list. You sell out, and then you develop a waiting list of people who want to come and fill the stands. And because you have that kind of demand, then you can raise your prices. Once you have a big audience, then you can start to monetize the secondary revenue streams. You can sell advertising. You can do sponsorships. You can sell suites to corporations who really are saying they're an owner of the team. They're buying the suite for 10 years, and now they're giving the seats as gifts, right, to pay to their customers and their partners. And you want the best software companies in the world, Oracle, Salesforce.com. They say this is how many big customers we have. They have the best balance sheets, and we're able to build into the contract annual increases, 3%, 4%, 5% per year. So I looked when I bought into the leagues, I said, holy mackerel, we are the world's biggest, best SaaS companies.
Software as a service.
Yeah. And who are our partners? Disney, ESPN, Comcast, Capital One Arena has the naming rights. They're one of the biggest banks in the world. You go down and you see there's not a lot of variability in the business. It's repeatable, and you know who the customers are and how the growth gets built in. So I've just become a spokesperson, if you will, for the category.
Right.
And I thought one day private equity, one day smart money is going to come into this business, because to date, it's mostly been family-run businesses. You bought a sports team for $5 million, 50 years ago.
Alex is like, did you say $5 million?
Yeah. The Washington Capitals were an expansion team. I think it was a $5 million fee.
So speaking on that, Ted, I was reading that you might be interested in the Nationals. So I was hoping, like, if there's an opening as a bullpen coach or first base coach, I'd be available for you. But why the Nationals?
So first, I'm a season ticket holder for the Nationals, and I played baseball growing up. I played third base, Alex.
Okay, I like
Couldn't do shortstop, but third base, I good hand-eye coordination. And the owners of the Nationals, the Lerner family, they're spectacular family real estate people. They're bedrock in the community, and they're small investors in Monumental Sports. And we're friends. And the stakes have gotten higher and higher in sports. And in baseball, they have to compete with the Yankees. You have to compete with the Mets. You have to compete with the Dodgers. And these big markets, bigger markets right now, they have the resources to go get players. That's why the CBAs for leagues drive value, right? The NHL has a hard cap. We had a lockout. We came back with a hard cap system. It means every team in the NHL thinks it can win the Stanley Cup when the new season starts.
Because they're all spending the same amount of money.
Yep.
On players.
And the playoffs, everyone thinks the playoffs are attainable. And once you get in the playoffs, anything can happen. And that's why attendance is fantastic in the NHL. The game's never been in better shape. CBA was very instrumental in that. Basketball has a great CBA as well. Teams can make the decision to spend more than the cap, but they get penalized for that. And those dollars go into a pot, and they go to the smaller market teams, which make the smaller market teams feel when it's time, we will compete. We'll go into the tax if we think that's the right thing. But it gives you rules of the road. In baseball, it has CBA, but you've got teams that spend $300 million and teams that spend $30 million. Well, if you're a fan in one of those markets, it's tough to go with enthusiasm because you go, it's very unlikely.
Right.
Right. And, the Marlins, we were talking about Wayne Huizenga, they won the championship one year and then he dismantled the team.
Mm-hmm.
He was losing money.
Yep.
Most teams that win a championship and pay a tax, they lose money in their championship winning year. Right. So with the Nationals, I look and I go, well, we have a platform. We just bought our network. Everyone's going to streaming. Streaming is about subscriptions. If you want to have a subscription, like at AOL back in the heyday, you didn't have mail available for 9 months out of the year. You have to have a year-round subscription. So I have felt that from a business standpoint, having a platform and having winter and summer programming is going to be critical to build value for the network because you won't get the churn, right? Oh, you lost in the first round of the playoffs in April. I'm going to cancel my subscription and I'll sign back up when the new season starts. Mm-hmm. If you're in the playoffs and baseball is started, you're going to have a real good, strong subscription base. So from a business standpoint, it's very compelling. And then to be able to sell advertising indoors, outdoors, on television, cross-promote. But the real reason you want to do it is you want to win championships. And I think in this new world where there's all this money coming in the sports teams and sports teams are being valued incredibly high, a football team in Washington, D.C. just sold for $6 billion to the smartest, wealthiest people who had to syndicate.
Right.
They couldn't afford it themselves.
Were you shocked by that price?
No, I think it's undervalued.
Wow.
Steve Ballmer, who I respect very much and I consider a friend, and we're like the same age and we competed, for decades.
Fierce rivals back in the day.
Yeah.
And now rivals in a different way.
And
but friends.
He certainly kicked my ass plenty of places. But he paid $2 billion for the Clippers. And everyone was shocked.
Mm-hmm.
And laughed at him.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And he's a smart guy. And he bought hundreds, if not thousands, of companies for Microsoft that were SaaS businesses that you pay 10 times revenues for a software company when you acquire it. So let's say a basketball team was doing $200 million and you had a new media deal on the horizon and you had naming rights partners. And so Steve knew he wasn't overpaying for it.
Mm-hmm.
Thank God for Steve Ballmer.
Mm-hmm.
It was very helpful because Mark Cuban entered the league the same time that I did, and we were tech people, and we would be advocating it, but Steve actually did it. And now you ask someone, well, what's an NBA team worth? Oh, it's 10 times revenue, right? What's a hockey team worth? Oh, 7, 8, 9 times revenues. I think the Brooklyn Nets, it was reported they traded at 14 times revenue. They brought in partners. And it's not overvalued, but this belief that the trees automatically will continue to grow to heaven is dangerous.
Right.
We're in the red line right now of danger because if Josh Harris and Mitch Rales and Eric Schmidt, all these people have to come together to reach to buy a football team, does that mean in 5 years, 10 years, the investors are going to get 5 times their money on $6 billion? How are you going to get $30 billion? That's why private equity, I brought the first sovereign wealth fund into sports.
The Qataris, right?
Yeah. And it was simple. Their belief was my belief. We want to put our money into a safe, durable, almost family-like business in a big, important market. So where do they invest? In New York, in London, in Washington, D.C. Safe harbor for their money.
How did that deal come together? Tell us about that.
I was introduced to them through my investment revolution, and then
Your venture firm.
my venture firm with Steve Case. So I knew of them, and then they were doing the World Cup, and private equity companies were reaching out to us because we're an attractive company. We do a lot of revenues in a big market.
Reaching out to Monumental.
But private equity isn't investing their money. They get LPs and
Limited partners.
And they've got 5 to 7 year horizons usually. My horizon is the rest of my life. And then
and beyond, I was going to say.
And then Zach.
And a sovereign wealth fund, that's what they're attracted to. Oh, we want to be in a safe city with a lead investor who has a lot of skin in the game and isn't going to do crazy things and is strategic and smart and will support you. And, oh, you want to buy the baseball team. If we had said, oh, I want to buy any baseball team. I want to buy a soccer team in South America. Well, that's off strategy. Our strategy is build the world's most valuable regional sports and entertainment company on the planet, get it to a $10 billion market cap. Maybe one day this is a asset class and companies are going to have to start going public. Once private equity came in, they want out at some point.
It's inevitable.
So, I don't have very many gifts, but I have been good at peering around the corner a little bit and seeing what's out there. And so, we were maybe the first to really advocate it's a software service like business analysts, media people who cover the business of sport will get it. Bloomberg will get it. You're in the subscription. Bloomberg's in the subscription business.
We believe deeply in that business model, yes.
And they subscribe. And I bet you Mike Bloomberg has subscribers from day one who took his first terminal and, continued
and God
to
bless
pay
them.
it. He's like Wayne Huizenga.
So, Ted, obviously in the news has been private equity entering the world of the NFL, but only at a 10% clip, which they're being their last, but they're also being very conservative. What are your thoughts about the NFL and private equity and that kind of merger?
I can't speak for the NFL. I don't own a team, but it's pretty clear that there's not a lot of people left that can buy 6, 8. I saw the Cowboys are valued at $10 billion.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's probably on the low end.
Yeah.
So it unlocks another pool, but the NFL's conservative and they're very wise. They've built, the city on the hill, if you will, for all sports. And my bet is over time, they'll change it. You have to be able to adapt to whatever the new reality is. And just because they did 10%, I don't think that'll be a forever number. Maybe it will, but it probably has some leeway. The NBA, we were pioneers. We're like a venture-backed company.
The NBA is a league.
Yeah, I'd say we've been the growth stock. The tree grows to heaven. Everyone says, oh, it's going great at the NBA. Oh, the media deals are great. Well, the local media deals aren't great.
Right.
We're really struggling, right? And it's hard work. It's no different serving on a committee of the leagues as it is serving on a committee of a big public company. I'm on the board of American Express right down the street from here. It's a regulated business, and the governance of the company and the board's role and what we do in the committees it plays a vital role. So we're all concerned and working really, really hard to figure out it's not our product that isn't of interest locally. Our ratings are up while viewership of television is way down. So that means we are taking the interest from, other networks, other shows, other pieces of content. But it's a very tough pivot as young people. Remember, cable was the last big exponential boost for sports teams.
Right.
So the media industry is changing radically. I'm chairman of the media committee at the NBA and the NHL, and you have to stay on trend. You have to understand what's going on. You can't blame people. You can't blame consumers. A kid goes to college. Kid grows up at home, and he's watching over-the-air television or cable, and then he goes to college, and there's no cable.
Right.
Everything is wireless. So when he or she graduates from college, you're not calling the cable company.
Right.
You're
subscribing to Hulu.
You're getting your iPhone and you're rolling your own now all of a sudden. And so
rolling your own.
So you've gotta watch all those trends, and then you have to figure out, who do I partner with? Who can mutually value what we have? And the thing about pro sports, here's a superstar player with charisma who's now in chapter 2 of his career, and people will watch him on air, but his star was so bright, he brought people to watch the games in the stadium and on television.
This guy?
Yeah,
I thought he was talking about you, Kelly.
Michael Jordan was my partner for a while.
Yeah.
And you could just see in the interactions, I was once in a hotel lobby with Michael Jordan, and we had to walk through the whole lobby, and people said, "It's Michael Jordan." And I said, I could have been naked on fire with an axe in my head.
And they'd push you out of the way.
Did you see that naked guy with the axe? No, I didn't. I didn't see. Right? So sports brings that together, and a winning team with stars, the engagement level is like no other business. And that's what advertisers want. That's what sponsors want. That's what mayors want. That's what governors want. They want that shine. So it's such a unique business, and we still have a lot of upside, if you will, because I think streaming isn't killing sports. I think streaming is going to be ultimately a big positive, right? For teams, it's amazing to me, again, being a tech executive, I guess, in my background, the data is all we lived on at AOL. Google, one, is built the second or third most valuable company on the planet because they have the data. Right. They know where you're going. When we just bought our RSN, I asked the people at Comcast NBC, a very important media company, who are the customers? Men. I go, really? That's how men?
I feel like we can do better.
How old? Well, 18 to 50. It's like, you don't know who your customers are.
Yeah.
Why? Because the cable company gets the customer, and then they buy the programming from the RSN. And the RSNs, people don't realize in all the changes, they were enjoined by Congress that the cable company couldn't share the names because of privacy. So when I bought our regional sports network, I didn't know who one customer, one viewer was. No RSN does.
Wow.
Isn't that crazy?
Wow, that's incredible.
If you go direct to consumer, you're streaming on OTT, you're like the cable company. You get the relationship with those people. And then the other thing that blows my mind, in being counterintuitive, I think that's where fortunes get made. I'd hear from cable companies. I just saw an analysis. Can you believe it's $700 if you wanted to watch every NFL game and you had to subscribe and I go, we charge $2,500 a game for one ticket in the dream seats at the Wizards.
Yeah.
And fans will arrive late and leave early. Right? And go get something to eat at halftime. And you see the empty seats. I go, it's $2,500 a seat. What could be more important? And they're having a beer and, being with some friends. And so I go, we have to change that as a mindset now, that cable was offering you all the video, all the audio, all the data for $1,000 a year, and people didn't think it was worth it.
Right.
But they'd pay $1,000 for one ticket for a Minnesota Timberwolves game.
Yeah.
So I think a part of our next upside is going to be, we'll be the bundler. The sports teams will be the bundler.
The teams themselves.
Yeah. And we're selling a seat, and you'll get a jersey. You'll play golf with the team, and you'll get Uber Eats credits, and you'll get discounts for publication. And we have to be the bundler, and a part of the bundle, just like Prime. Think about what Amazon did. I'm sending you stuff that you bought, and I'm going to give you free delivery, but you're going to pay me a monthly subscription.
Yeah.
And now I'm going to start to put things into the bundle. And now Prime Video is the biggest. I think they have 90 million subscribers.
Unbelievable.
So subscriptions, building passionate audiences, and having those reoccurring revenues, I think, is what our business is about.
All right, we're gonna do a quick rapid fire with you, and so the like 1 to 2 word answers for all of this. All right. What's one word to describe your deal making style?
I use niceness as a competitive weapon.
What's more important, gut or data?
I don't think either works alone. But if I had to pick one at where I am in my life and career, I'd say gut. I've seen it all.
Who's your dream deal-making partner?
Peter Guber. Peter Guber, we were competing for a deal and we didn't know about it. And at the last second, we told each other. And he said, oh, we're friends. Let's do the deal together. And I'll never forget this. He said, we'll laugh together, we'll cry together, but we'll have a great journey as friends. And he's the greatest.
This is the second try at this question, but what is the greatest deal you've ever made?
In terms of money?
Sure.
Well, I sold my company, my little startup, to America Online, and I got 10% of AOL in what was called a pooling of interest. If you can believe it, AOL was $400 million. I got $40 million of stock. And 9 years later, the company, when we bought Time Warner, was worth $170 billion. Which back then, that was real money.
Wow.
There were no $1 trillion market cap.
Still feels like real money to me.
Yeah.
What's the best piece of advice you've ever received on deal making or business?
Don't get too high with the highs and too low with the lows.
What's your hype song when you go into a big negotiation or a meeting?
My hype song? People laugh at this, but I used to be a punk, and I'd go to CBGBs, and Talking Heads were my favorite band, and so probably Once in a Lifetime by the Talking Heads.
Love it. You can only watch one sport for the rest of your life. Which one is it? This is a good one for you.
I'm going to surprise people, but hockey is the most honest game. You can't hide in hockey. You're on skates, and you have to go 100% full out. You can't run out of bounds. You can't hold your knees during a foul shot. It's an honest sport, and I've really come to enjoy the live experience.
Yeah, congrats to our mutual friend and champion, Vinny Viola. Shout out, the best.
The greatest, and he deserves his Stanley Cup, his immortality.
What team do you want to win a championship more than any other?
I have real clarity of thought of what I have to accomplish in the next 25 years, or you'll be scarred. I've won championships everywhere. I've taken companies public, but I haven't broken the code in the NBA. And so I have to make the Wizards. And you know from last year how hard it is to get from round to round to round. And the furthest I've gotten in the playoffs is Game 7, lost to Celtics in the semifinals of the East. And you think, oh, I got a young team. It's just going to keep going from there. And then injuries and bad trades, and all of a sudden you're rebuilding. And careers are short, and you learn, and I want to build it the right way. But we have to win a championship for the fans, for the Wizards.
All right. Well, this has been really fun. Ted Leonsis, thank you so much.
Thank you,
Thanks,
Ted.
guys.